My poor chicken coop has been smashed by the cyclone, so everything is pulling apart and falling. So I'm going to have to build a new chicken coop for my babies. To make my new chicken coop, I'm going to be trying to salvage a lot of the fencing that was blown down by the cyclone. Because the frame is so large and it's a bit difficult to see what I'm doing, I thought I'd show you on a piece of paper what I've done. So I've taken two pieces of wood which is 1.8 meters long and two pieces that are 1.4 meters, and I've just joined them at the corner, and I've used L brackets to join them, and so that my frame is a little bit more secure, I've put little pieces of wood underneath across the base of the feet like that, so I can actually balance my coop, because my ground is really uneven, as you'll see in some of the videos that I'll be showing you. And to that we're going to be adding the supports. Now on the right hand side of my coop, I'm using the railings that I managed to rescue from the fence, and we're putting one in each of these corners here that are 1.8 on this side, and it graduates down on the other side 166 centimeters, because I've got a 14 centimeter gradient on my chicken coop. And on this side we're going to be adding the feet that we cut out of those really big pieces of wood. We're putting one on the corner here, one in the corner there, and marking in at 80 centimeters we're going to put another one just in there and one on the other side as well. So we've got them looking like that, and then we're going to be joining the woods that are here with a 1.4 going across that one and going across that one. And so this one I've marked it at 80 centimeters for this particular post to be placed in, so that one there is 80 centimeters, because I want to have a 10 centimeter overlap on this side, so that I've got a kickback for opening the egg boxes. And we're going to place another piece of wood just in there, 90 centimeters, and another one on that side. So now we've got the platform to put the egg laying boxes on, and then I'll be showing you how to build the sides up like this, dividing that in half so that the chicken's got something to stand on. So that's the egg box section just there. So we've got another piece of wood that'll be going across the top, so the whole piece will come together like that. And this is going to be the roofing. The back one I'm doing a complete 180, so that is going to be the full length going all the way across the whole back. I'm not putting one in the front because obviously that's where the door is going to go. So that's to support all the wood panels that are going to be closing this whole section at the back in. And on this side here we've got another one that's going across this way, which will support all the wood palings coming down this way. To make the frame I'm using some old bed frames, and I've got these rather large pieces of wood that I found in the garden. So these ones are 3 centimeters by 15 centimeters wide, which I'm going to be using for the side supports, and I've cut all of them at 70 centimeters for the legs. I've rescued some of the railings to make the frame. To stabilize my frame I'm taking a piece of wood which is a 1.8 meter, and I'm attaching them at the base of the legs like that. So I'm going to be first of all placing them just with the nail gun, and then I'll screw them in later. So I'm going all the way around. So I've got a 1.8 in the front and a 1.8 at the back, and the sides are 1.4 meters in length. So this is just a small chicken coop or roosting house. So this is the small area where I'm going to be placing my chicken coop, and as you can see, the ground is quite unlevel. So what I'm doing is I'm placing little pieces of wood across the legs at the base underneath so that I can try and level my frame. So the actual frame is going to be 4 centimeters bigger than the platform that we're going to be making, so that we've got a 2 centimeter gap just on this side for us to start nailing the palings onto the board like that. So 2 centimeters this side, 2 centimeters that side. I've cleaned up some of my wood palings, and these particular ones are 1.8 meters. So I'm going to be taking 7 of them and cutting them into 90 centimeters each. And I'm just using my drop saw to do that. I'm building the egg box platform on the ground. I've got all my pieces cut at 90 centimeters each, and now I'm taking just one piece and another piece of wood that is a 180, and I'm going to be joining those two together. So the 180 is going to be for nailing the wood panels to the other one. So I'm joining them just like this so that they're lying flush with each other. I'm just using my nail gun to do that. So this is the piece that we've just attached, and now I'm taking another piece which is for the egg laying box, and I'm going to be attaching all these pieces to that particular one so that I've got a nice square like that. From the end I'm marking in by 43 centimeters, and I'm drawing a line right across the whole piece, and then I'm going to be taking one of those extra pieces of wood and putting it underneath here to make the square for the egg box. So I'm going to nail those all in now. So you will see some of the video where I'm showing you this small piece that we're going to be placing in the side here for this to divide this section. It'll look like soil, but it's actually just this small piece that we're putting in these posts on the sides and then closing it up here. To close the small section on the side over here, I've got another little piece of board which I'm just going to be cutting to size and closing that like that. Flip the box over now so that I can get the right measurements for the little compartments. So I've measured them all at 34 centimeters. So I've got 4 that are going to be going in there. Now that the egg box platform is completed, we're going to just raise it and put it onto the frame. For the egg laying box, we've built the little compartment with these pieces that are raised up on the side, and this is the flat piece that extends out. And now we're going to be adding the supports that are going to be going on the side from the one in there, one there. I've taken a piece of railing and I've cut it at 1.2 meters, and I'm attaching one of these L brackets to the bottom so that I can attach it to the top of the coop. I'm just going to be doing some pilot hole drills first, and make sure that you've got it the right way around so that we want the flat part flush with here. So I'm just going to do that. I've drilled it in and I've left them quite loose so that I can just the bottom one here, and then I'll tighten those once this one has been secured. I'm setting my piece back in line with this particular piece of wood so that I can attach the next piece that's going to be covering this part of the coop. So I'm just going to put that in position, and then we're going to mark just here where we're going to be drilling to securing that in place. I've secured the bottom one, and now we can start on this one. Now this particular piece is to make the housing for the nesting box and to close this all in. So, and now I'm going to be tightening these ones, and I've also got some 5 centimeter wood screws which I'm going to be putting through there to attach it to the back panel. The next railing I'm going to be cutting at 110 centimeters, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this one, just on the other side. We are attaching the crossbar to that. Now these ones are quite a lot longer. So this one is 1.2 meters, which we've just attached, and this one is the 1.1. From the top of my post, I'm measuring down to 75 centimeters is where I'm going to be putting the next railing to go across. Next piece of wood, I've cut exactly the same size as the base piece because this one is going to be going up, and the distance is 37 centimeters between there. So when you measure from the top of the post on this one, you're going down by 65 centimeters because we took 10 centimeters off that one. So we're going to attach the bar across here now. I've cut a small template of wood which is 35 centimeters so that I can line my railing up, and I've just used some nails to secure it for the time being, and now I'm going to use the screws to screw them in. And then we've got the shorter one which is 35 centimeters long, 35 centimeters long, and we are attaching the crossbar to that. I'm working on the front part of the egg laying box, so I've cut another piece which is exactly the same length as the base, which is like that, and I've cut two pieces at 35 centimeters, which are going to be the supports going to go in the corner like that. I'm just going to attach those exactly the same way as I attached these ones, with the L-shaped bracket and screws. So we've got all those posts in, and now we're going to be putting a crossbar that is going at an angle to line up with this one. So it's going to be going up like that, and that one is going up to line up with this one as well, so that we've got a slope going down like that. I put a crossbar from the chicken egg laying thing to some of the coop there, so it's just sitting across at an angle like that, and I've done the same on the other side. Now unfortunately for me, as you can see, my wood is extremely bowed. There's not much I can do about that, so I'm going to be putting another support just at the top here, and then the supports are going to be going one here and one at the top as well for the panels of wood to go on. The next thing I'm going to be doing is in the gap that is just here, which is the back of the chicken feeder where the door is going to go, I've got a spare piece of wood and I'm just cutting that. I'm going to fit that in there so that the door is actually fitting flush against this part like that. I put some of the pieces of wood up that are going to be going over the chicken egg laying boxes, but my brad nails are a little bit big, so before I go any further I'm going to be taking a pair of pliers and curling them and then knocking them in. So while it's all open, that's the best time for me to do that. I've been collecting my UHT milk containers, and all I'm going to be doing is opening it out and cutting them like that, which I'm going to be using to try and waterproof the chicken coop egg laying section. This is the part that I'm going to be working on now. So this is the inside of the chicken egg laying section, and I'm taking my milk cartons and I'm going to be stapling them to the inside here. Not only will it keep it dry, but it'll also keep it warm because it's like insulated. And I'm just going to staple those on. I've made a makeshift fence for my saw table so that I can cut my angles here for my egg laying boxes. So I'm just going to cut the 3 pieces like that. I'm just using old offcuts of pieces of wood, and these ones that I'm using are actually chipboard, which is not ideal, but that's all I've got. I'm working on putting the dividers in for the egg laying box, so I've got a distance of 135, which I've divided by 4, which is giving me 32.5. So I'm just going to be placing each one of my divisions into the section marked at 32.5, and then I'll nail them all in using the air gun. So I'm going to be nailing from this side and then from the front of this panel. I've got all the divisions in on my egg boxes. So now what I'm doing is I'm just taking some of the pieces of wood, the fence palings, and I'm putting them on top like that. Now because I've got a small little gap just over there, I've cut a 4 centimeter strip, which I'm going to be placing up against there like that. And then I'm just going to put the waterproofing, which is the chicken feed bags. I'm going to be placing those underneath all the wood so that I know where to nail on my beams on top of my dividers. Because once I put the plastic over here, I'm not going to be able to see these. So what I'm doing is I'm just marking my pieces of wood as to where I am able to shoot the nails in. And I'm marking all the pieces like that. I put my small piece of wood on the top to cover that gap. And now I'm just going to nail that in. The small piece of wood that I put at the top there, because my wood is bowed, there's a little bit of a gap just in there. So I'm just taking some silicone and filling that little gap. I've got this under mattress protector, which is just a little piece of foam, and I'm just cutting it up to put inside my little boxes. I've put all the foam in to encourage my chickens to lay in the new coop, and also not to break their eggs, because I have a problem with them breaking them and eating them. I bought these little tiny artificial eggs from Temu, and I'm just going to be placing them into the little laying boxes. I've got some old pieces of plywood which are not a very good condition, and I'm just going to be cutting them down. So the length of it is 68 centimeters by 30 centimeters wide, and I'm just going to be using my serter. I've marked where I will need to cut, and I'm just going to cut that small piece off. And I'm cutting 2 pieces exactly the same. And now I'm going to just give them a light sand so that I can paint them. So just to remove some of the little splinters. Normally I wouldn't paint for my chicken coop, but because these pieces of wood are in quite poor condition, I'm going to be painting these ones. I've got some leftover paints from previous projects which I want to use, and this one is sort of like a biscuit colour, and the other one is kind of like a brownish colour, which I'm going to be using. So the first colour I'm using is the darker colour, and I'm just going to put a base coat down of that. I'm doing very small sections at a time, so while the paint is still wet, I'm taking the lighter colour and I'm just doing some wood grain looking patterns in it. So I'm just starting. So just like that. And I'm doing the whole piece exactly the same. So that's the first one completed, and now I'm going to do the other one exactly the same. I finished the second one, and once the paint is dry, I'm going to flip them over and do the other side. To make the door, I've got a piece of wood which I rescued from an old bed frame, and the width of this particular one is 10 centimeters. So I'm just dividing it in half. I've got my circular saw set at 33 degrees, and I've put my fence in place, which is 5 centimeters. And now I'm going to be cutting this big piece of wood at the 5 centimeter mark. The one extra piece that I've got that I've cut down for the sides of the door, I'm going to be cutting the other side over so I can make a handle. So I'm flipping my piece over and putting it into my fence so that this cut side is already facing the fence. So I'm just cutting the other side off like that. So my piece will look like that. To make the handle, I'm also removing this side little pieces over here so that it's an angled piece like that. So I'm cutting this small section off, which is exactly the same angle as that we've been using, but it just makes it a better looking handle. The pieces of wood that I cut for my door, I'm just painting them all black, and I'm just using the color called all black. To cut the wood, because we're working with wood that has got an angle on one side, when you're cutting, you must mark in the direction where you're going to make a 45-degree angle. So for myself personally, I like to use the greater and smaller signs so that I know exactly which side is bigger and which side is my smaller side. So this particular one has got to be cut pretty much like that. So I mark it that that's the smaller side and that's the greater side. So I put an arrow going like that so that I know when it comes to cut the wood that this part has got to be smaller than this part. Now when you're cutting the wood, this particular angle here is quite okay to cut when you've got it this way. So the angle that's this one is going to be going down like that. For the opposite angle, which is this one, don't put the wood like that and cross your arms to hold the wood on this side, because that's very, very dangerous to do that. So instead of doing that, keep all your pieces of wood on the one side. So you see that particular angle is going like that. So now if I want it to go in the opposite direction, all you do is flip the piece of wood over so that you've got your flat side, and then it works by cutting, and that's a safer way to do it. Angled side is on the inside. You've got your 45-degree angle cut, and it all lines up nicely. The wood is very old, so I'm covering it with the sealer, and I'm using Brilliance, and all I've done is decanted it into a little pot like that, and I'm just using a chalk wipe like this, and just going to be putting it all over the wood and the wood panels, and I'm going to be putting 3 coats on. I've just used some staples to hold the corners together, so now I'm going to be placing my pieces of wood on top, and I'm using 16mm staples to staple those pieces of wood on. I've got my panels all stapled on, and I've put brad nails through the centerpiece, which I'm going to be smacking over and hitting in. So that's what our door for the egg laying section looks like. I've put the door on the egg laying section now, and I just used butt hinges to put it on with. And now I'm going to be taking one of the pieces of palings and I'm cutting it to 3 centimeters so that this piece can go along the top like that. So it's the same height as my door, so I can put the lock onto that. To make the drop down hinges for the egg laying box, I've cut 2 pieces of string at 50 centimeters each, and I'm just going to be tying a knot on the end of each piece. I've tied a knot around each piece, and I'm just taking some of the tabs from soft drink bottles and putting a screw through that, and then I'm going to screw them into my door. So I'm going to put 1 screw in there and 1 over here. So I've screwed my piece on, and as you can see when the door opens, it just supports it, so this particular one doesn't just fall flat down. And we have to do the same on the other side. So now when I take the eggs out, the egg boxes, my door is not going to fall down, so I've got 2 hands to grab the eggs, and I can put something on here to just collect the eggs. So just to get the right gradient, I've put 14 pieces down, but I'm only going to be using 7 pieces that I'm cutting, because I'll be using the other side once I've cut these to complete side. I've laid all my pieces of wood that I need to cut at the angle to get my roofing. So the first one is starting at 75 centimeters and it's gradually going down to 61 centimeters. So I'm just going to mark those pieces of wood so I can cut them. I've cut my first piece, and the remainder piece that I've cut off there I've put into the second position. So now I'm just going to be cutting that small piece off there for the second paling. I've got all the panels put on. I've used fence railings to build the whole frame for the chicken coop. As I said, this one is just the coop, it's not the run. So that's what I've put together so far. As you can see, there's quite a bit of a gap on some of the pieces of wood because they are bowed slightly. I'm using milk containers to try and waterproof the chicken coop. I've stapled all the milk cartons up on the inside and in the egg laying section as well. I've got this old shelf which I'm not using. So what I'm trying to do now is remove this small section so I can flatten this part out. I've made a small frame for holding my metal mesh and then closing that. I've already closed this section. It's starting to come together now. And now I'm going to be closing the whole back piece in with wood. I've got all the back panels put on. So now I'm going to be working on my ladder. To get my ladder so that I get the right angles here, what I've got is a piece of wood, and I've just taken another piece of wood like that and drawn a line to give me the angle where it's going to lie flat, and then I've cut that off. Now, depending on how steep you want your ladder, you have to work out the angles yourself. So this is what my ladder will look like. So I've cut the angles off at the top as well, so that the ladder is going to be sitting nice and flat like that. So what the top looks like, it's like this. So this part here goes against the wood, and that is the top. So at the angles that you're going to be working with, you just need to work out how much to cut off on each of yours. I've marked the 4 places where I'm going to be putting my roosting posts on. So I've got one there, and they're 30 centimeters apart. I'm just using all my offcuts of wood. So here's my line. So we're just going to take that and line it so that it's exactly straight, so that the next piece has got something for us to nail it onto. I've lined both my pieces next to each other so that they are joining like that, so that because they're on the reverse, so you need to make sure that they're lined up correctly. So what I've done is I've marked my center point of my 30 centimeters. Now for the angle that I need, your angles might be different. I'm going 3 centimeters past my center line on the one side and 2 centimeters on the other side, which gives me my angle that I need, which is like that. And then all I'm doing is I'm taking my offcuts and placing them like that, so that I can put the piece that's going to be going on top. So I've got something to nail it onto. Obviously I'm not using this piece to go on top. I've got pieces which are the steps, which I've got at 49 centimeters because that's the width of my ladder. Once you've marked your pieces on the one side, as you'll notice, the legs are going like that. So you need to do the exact same pattern on the other one. So this one is going up and this one is coming down. So just make sure that you remember to change the direction of your angles for when you're putting your steps onto the other piece of wood. So for this one, that's my center line. So that particular part is 2 and this side would be 3. That side is 3 and this side is 2. So the 2 2's go together. And now I'm just going to nail my little pieces to the wood legs. I've nailed all the steps onto the ladder, and now I'm going to be putting pieces of wood at the bottom underneath like this, so that the ladder is stable and won't slide. I've got my ladder in place. At the top where I've put the support in so that the ladder doesn't fall down, I'm going to be putting blinds coming down there, and so that I've got easy access for removing the droppings. I have not connected my metal grid, so when I want to clean it out, all I have to do is just take the ladder off there and take the grid off the top, because I'm going to be sealing the bottom going all the way around that section with chicken mesh. For my door, I'm going to be using this old bed base, and I'm just going to be putting some hinges on that. I've put my door on using butt hinges. Normally you would recess the hinges in, but because I've got such a big gap with all the wood being so uneven, I haven't recessed either side of them. So I've put one at the top and one at the bottom. So the door is working quite nicely. As you can see, my door is just a little bit small, so I'm going to be putting an extra paling along there so that it closes it all in. So I've had to extend this little piece at the bottom here so that I can actually attach the wood to that. To make the locking mechanism for the door, I'm just taking a small piece of wood and I'm going to be attaching it like that. I'm putting 2 screws in, one there and one there. And then on top of that, which will be the part that's going to be moving to open and close, I'm going to be using the piece of wood that we cut that looks like this, that's got the 45-degree angles on the side so that it can go over and close nicely. For the handle, I've used a drill bit that's slightly bigger than the screw that I'm using so that the screw is free moving in that little hole. So it just has got no grip on it, so it's easy to turn. And on the actual connection where it's going into, I'm using the right size drill bit so that holds tight. So I've screwed it on, and as you can see, door closes, and then this one will just come down like that and close the door. For the side panels that I'm putting up on this side here, I'm just using the complete piece of wood, which is a 1.5 meter, and I'm just going to make it go from the top to the bottom, so it will be going at an angle from here going up, and this part here I'm going to be putting chicken wire on. I've closed the whole side in now, and as I said, there'll be a small gap at the bottom which I'm going to be using chicken mesh to go around. I've taken some of the other chicken coop that was broken and I've just used the wood. It's not a perfect fit, but it'll do. So I've covered the whole back part. As I said, I've repurposed some of the old wood, and as you can see, it's got a bit of a gap going through it. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking some of this shade cloth and I'm going to just be placing it all along to close the gap, just to stop animals getting in there. Plus it'll give them a bit of ventilation inside. I've got all the shade cloth on, and now I'm just going to trim it all, the bottom off here, and I've got a really thin piece of wood that was cut off from one of the palings, and then I'm just going to be sticking that along the bottom like that, just to make it look a little bit neater. To waterproof all the other walls in the chicken coop, so I've done those ones with the milk cartons, and all the other ones I'm going to be just using the bags that I'll get my chicken feed in, and I'm going to be placing them all over. I'm putting the chicken wire on now, and I've left a really long opening so that I can secure it at the bottom here as well with another piece of wood so that they can't dig under. And I'm just going to attach it with my staple gun. So that I don't have any sharp edges of chicken wire, I've cut it to the right size, and I'm just bending these small sharp pieces inward, and then I'm going to be placing a piece of wood over them all. I've stapled it all on all the way around, and now I'm just going to place the final piece of wood like that to just cover all of that in there. I've got a real problem with the wild bush turkeys, so what I've done is I've taken a plastic bag and I've just sliced it so that it's like one of those fly doors, and I'm hoping that the turkeys are not going to be brave enough to walk through this to get into the chicken coop. So I'm just going to be stapling it across the door like that. I've stapled my plastic to cover the door, so hopefully the chickens will go through that, but not the turkeys. To train my chickens to get through my little door here with the plastic, what I've done is I've folded up 3 of them so that there's just one hanging down on the one side, and as they get used to it, then I will lower another one, and eventually it'll be closed, and then they'll still be confident to walk in and out. I've got this old piece of roofing that I'm going to be using for my chicken coop, and I've bought this little electric drill refitting plate shears which I'm hoping is going to be able to cut through that roofing. So it took a little bit of time, but I've managed to get through it. Now we're going to put it up. It's been raining for a week, and as you can see, everything is absolutely saturated. But going into my little chicken coop, so this is the outside, and on the inside everything is beautiful and dry. So I'm pretty happy with all the waterproofing that we've done. So the last thing that I'm doing on the chicken coop now is I'm putting the heat lamp in. So I've attached a screw to the top of my coop just over here. So I've got one of these adjustable ones that can move, so I can direct the light, the heat where I want it. I've just put a hook in so that when I'm not using my heat lamp in summer, the wires are out of the way. So there's my chicken coop completed. So it's got the blind to keep them warm, and there's stairs for roosting on, the heat lamp, and where the cords are kept in summer, and then of course the egg laying boxes, and the base there where the chicken poop is all caught to fertilize the garden, and then their little door here. I've also got their automatic chicken feeder in as well. And then we come to this side where I've got my little attachment to just open the door, and the cords to hold the door from collapsing, so I can just retrieve the eggs from this side. And from the side we've got the little barn sliding door, and everything is all enclosed all the way around. And then the shade cloth for some fresh air for them. So I can retrieve the fertilizer easily. I've placed a little door there as well. If you found this video helpful or you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.